cutting horse was born on the open range, where ranchers would gather vast herds for branding, doctoring, and drive them up the famous trails to feed a hungry nation over 100 years ago. Some horses were better suited for separating a cow from the herd, becoming the royalty of the remuda. Ranchers would brag and bet on who had the best cutting hoss, and competitions arose. These select few were crossbred to create what we have today.
If you can't cut it, move out the way. Let me in there, get out my way. Got me a cutting horse and we have style. We have technique, we're gonna dance a while. Dance, dance. Cutting.
Howdy folks, Kenny Ehmeyer here for the Weekend Cutter. Come join us as we take you on a trip from the practice pen to the show arena, and let you listen in as top cutting horse trainers prepare their students to compete in the Western industry's most exciting equine sport. So sit back, relax, and you'll learn what it takes to become a top weekend cutter right here on RFD TV.
Cutting horse dance, to the left, to the right.
Iconoclast Sports Boots. Visit westernlegacysales.com.
Cutting horse dance, left, right, left, right.
Oh baby, come on. Oh baby, come on. Oh baby, come on. It's so neat to meet you, baby, where the action is. Oh baby, come on. Oh baby, come on. Oh baby, come on. It's so neat to meet you, baby, where the action is.
There is something about the outside of a horse that is good for the inside of us all. You know it's true. Return the favor. Connect to the power of performance. Total Equine Horse Feed. Wellness for your horse's performance and well-being. Good inside. TotalEquine.info.
One of the most physically and demanding tasks required of the cow horse is holding the cow. Every joint, ligament, and muscle is tested to its limits. To keep your cutting horse on the cutting edge, Precision Joint Solution developed the most innovative joint supplement on the market today. By combining two exclusive ingredients, it supports the joints by decreasing inflammation, hindering cartilage breakdown, and increasing recovery time. Precision, the cutting edge for the cutting horse.
Hey folks, thanks for joining us this week. As you all recognize, this lady, Miss Lindy Birch. Lindy, thank you for being on the show this week.
Yeah, a pleasure.
Everybody in the cutting horse industry knows you. It's kind of like everybody knows who our president of the United States is, except we like you better.
Well, thank you. I hope so.
This is one of those, I call it our legends episode. And this lady is one of the legends of our sport. There's so many groundbreaking things that you have done in our sport as a cutter, much less as a woman cutter. It's amazing. First woman futurity champion, first woman open world champion, first woman NCHA president. You've been inducted into the Cowgirls Hall of Fame. Also the Cowboys Hall of Fame?
Yes, they let me in that too.
Lindy, that's amazing. Tell us what it was like to start in this sport as a woman cutter.
You know, and growing up, when I started competing in cutting when I was like 17 years old, really competing, I never thought of myself as a girl or a woman breaking into a man's sport. I just thought I was cutting with whoever else would cut.
Right.
And they were mostly guys, but it wasn't a true distinction to me, you know. So I just wanted, all my life, I've wanted to be, you know, one of the best cutters, one of the best horsemen, and gender really never entered into it at the time. And now a lot of other people brought the gender question up,
Right.
the issue that, well, how does it feel to be a girl in a man's world? And you're the first woman to win the futurity and the only woman to win the open world championship. You know, how are those things don't those affect you? And I said, and how was it growing up or doing that? But my answer always is, if you work hard and you're talented, but you're persistent and you don't, ask for any favors and just keep trying to compete and keep trying to get better, I think you earn everybody's respect, whether you're a man or a woman. I just happened to be the first woman to get there.
To hit some of those great milestones of our sport. And speaking about when you started cutting at 17 competitively.
Competitively, I started actually riding cutting horses a little earlier than that. I think I was around 13 or 14. I walked across the street and there was this kind of horse stables, with a couple of riding arenas, old arenas, roping arenas. And a fellow by the name of Bruce Cahill had moved in there and leased it and started training cutting horses. So I went over there one day and asked him for a job, and he said, can you work? And I said, yeah, I can work. And he said, well, if you saddle these horses and help me lope and learn to turn back, then I'll teach you how to cut. So I said, what do I owe you for that? He says, no, you don't have to pay for it, but I'm not going to pay you either. I said, well, that sounds like a plan to me. So that's how I started.
Wow. And that was in Southern California. How long? You stayed in Southern California for quite a while, and then you moved up to Northern California, Clements area.
Correct.
And how old were you when you went up there?
I was closer to 22 or 23. I stayed in Southern California, went to school at UCLA, and then transferred up to University of California, Davis.
Right.
Because I wanted to pursue a veterinary career. And I never got into vet school, so I got a bachelor's in zoology and then worked on a master's in endocrinology. Taught a little bit for a year. So by the time I moved I always had my cutting horses with me. I always showed. I always had, one or two horses. When I started showing, or when I moved to Clements, it was probably, I was probably about 24, 25 years old.
And then you were there 4 or 5 years before you came to Texas?
No, actually in Clements, I was there till 88. Then I moved to Carmel Valley.
Oh,
and I got to
okay.
work on the Carmel Ranch Company with Dan Lufkin, who owned the Oxbow Ranch. So I was able to work and ride horses all over the, pastures of heaven, as John Steinbeck wrote about them. A beautiful area. So I was there until about 92. Then I moved to Texas.
Well, you made a lot of the great milestones of your career were while you lived in California.
Correct.
Coming to show at the aged events in Texas.
That's right. I showed at Pacific Coast Cutting Horse Association, actually California Cutting Horse Association first when I was really young in the late 60s, 69, 68, 69, and in the 70s. I showed out there and just kind of worked my way up to the open. I showed in the ladies at first and the 250 novice, and when people say they always, I see people nowadays and they want to start at the top. They don't want to work their way up. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for them.
Hi, this is Tom Lyons from Grandview, Texas for the Weekend Cutter. We'll be right back.
What separates us from the rest of the bits out there? What makes these bits so unique? These bits are unique in the sense that these are all American made. Every bit's handmade, made right here in Gainesville, Texas. All 3 of these bits from start to finish, each one covers a different age or a different area, different stage in training, from your 2-year-old all the way to the finished horse. This is a bit made by horsemen for horsemen.
There are really no obstacles in getting a horse insured anymore. You don't need to find a vet. You don't need to load the horse up in the trailer to go get it vetted. You don't need to pay for those x-rays. All you have to do is find a phone, and we all know we have one of those at the tip of our fingers no matter where we're at, and just call 1-800-228-8664. And if you know you're going to be picking up a horse on a Saturday or Sunday, call us on Friday, and we'll get it all put together, and that horse will be insured when you load it up in the trailer.
Hi folks, I'm Larry Gatlin. Welcome back to the Weekend Cutter.
78, you showed at your first Futurity here in Fort Worth.
That's right. I'd always, this is kind of a little funny story, a little sideline, but I showed Hollywood Rita. I was showing Hollywood Rita in Southern California, in Imperial, California. And a new Texas trainer, you know, which was a big deal in California, a new Texas trainer had gone to work for Wayne Hodges in Wasco, California. Well, he happened to have this great horse down at this cutting named Calbar. And this trainer's name was Larry Reeder. And he had come from Matlock's in Texas and had was going to open up, had a training stable up there in Wasco. So he showed, and I showed against him in the open, and I was just in complete awe that Larry Reeder from Texas was here at our Southern California cutting. So he went in there on Calbar, great old Doc Bar stud, and he did well, marked at 74 or something. And I went in there on Rita, and I'm just even scared to death to introduce myself. I know it's hard to believe, but I was shy then. And so I wouldn't even introduce myself. I was scared to death of him. And so I showed Rita, and I marked 75. I beat him. I won the Open. So I was, you know, I'm watching Larry the rest of the day, and finally he comes up to me, because I'm too shy. And he says, hey, he said, what is your name? And I told him my name. And he said, you know what? He said, gosh, he said, you really ride well. And I said, well, thank you. And he said, you have a nice horse. And I said, well, thank you, Mr. Reeder. And he said, you know, I've never seen or met anybody that wanted this cutting more than I have, more than I do until today. He said, I believe you want to be good at this. You want to excel at this even more than I do. He said, so if that's true, you need to come up to Wasco and I'll help you. And like, you know, nobody even talked to me before then, you know, hardly. So I said, oh, absolutely. I said, I can be there Monday.
I'll be there Monday morning.
He goes, well, okay. So I showed up, and anyway, goes back to my first futurity. That was in '77, actually. And he didn't let me ride a futurity colt that year. He'd had a bunch of the guys already lined up to ride his futurity colts, and he had a big string of them. But the next year, he called me first, and he said, you want to ride a futurity mare for me? And I said, oh, absolutely. So that was a mare by the name of Miss Lena Barrett. And a really nice little Docalina mare that Billy Cogdell owned. So he let me ride her, and I come down for the whole Sweetwater experience, which was fabulous back then. Buster was there, and Greg and Gary and, you know, Mike, and we were all a lot younger then, but we were all there. And it was just a great experience. So I got to go through the Sweetwater deal and showed at the futurity, and I missed the finals by half a point. So, but I was thrilled that I was with Larry Reeder's camp and got to show at the futurity.
Imagine.
And I would walk into Will Rogers and just in awe, I'd look around at the arena and before the cutting started, like the day before. And I'd go sit in the stands and the box seats, and I thought, oh, you know, it was just like going into a shrine for me. For all these years, I had dreamt, and nothing I ever wanted more was to show at Will Rogers. So that was '78, and then '79, I came back on my own horse that I trained, a mare called Diamond Mystery, and I split reserve with Leon Harrell at the futurity, which was a real big deal there, and they made it a big deal, and it was a big deal to me.
Well, and you know, and a great guy. Leon's a dear friend of ours, and I know you and I've been sitting there at dinner with Leon here in Weatherford, and you walked in. I think you walked in one day and bought our dinner. Leon and I were sitting there, and we went to pay the check, and they said, well, Lindy's already got it. And,
yeah.
By the way, thank you for that. I forgot. It's been a couple years.
You're welcome. I forgot I even did it, but I'll take credit for it.
That was the first year you and Leon split.
In 79.
And then...
And Bill Freeman won it that year on Doc's Diablo. And Leon was riding New Niner Bar, and I was riding Diamond Mystery, this little bay mare. She was a Diamond Jigs, and nobody's ever heard of Diamond Jigs but me, probably, and out of a really nice Pocodell mare named Comodella. And Bill and Sue Long at that time had put her in training with me because she bucked everybody else off. So they gave her to me to train, but she was a wonderful, wonderful mare. I loved her dearly.
Well, that was when you You knocked on the door. The next year you showed up and you went through the door, 1980.
Right, on Miss Royal Mahogany.
That was the year that you won the Futurity. And that was just, what was that feeling like?
You know, it was fabulous, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. It was, again, a great experience. And it was just wonderful. It was maybe one of the few times, several times it's happened, of course, in your life, but, you know, that was a game changer for me, obviously. And the year before was a game changer, too. But it was so great to work that hard. And when I first started riding that horse, I went down to the Futurity about 3.5 weeks early, and Larry wanted me to come down to ride this mare. And he didn't think she, you know, of course he picked his 2 first, and then Miss Royal was like the 3rd mare, but I loved her. And she was a little quirky and a little different, but I just camped on her. I spent a lot of time on her and put my legs on her, and just a little different feel than Larry had on her. But Larry had done all the hard work, and I just put a little polish on her that would fit me.
Mm-hmm.
And winning that and going through that experience and working that hard, and then being able to come out on top with a 225.5 was what I marked, and that was the high score of the Futurity. It held until Mike Mowry, and I'm not sure the year, we'd have to look it up, in the 90s, late in the 90s, on Fern, his little mare marked at 26. But I held the high score of the Futurity for, I don't know, 15 years or so.
Hi, I'm Christopher Little from Gainesville, Georgia, and the Weekend Cutter will be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm Paul Hansma, Hall of Fame cutting horse trainer. I've been feeding Top of the Rockies alfalfa cubes from Manzanola Feeds for 2 or 3 years now. And I really like their convenience, the quality, and there's no mess, no waste. They're very easy and convenient to take to the shows with me. I like how my horses look, and I would recommend Manzanola Feeds. Give them a call.
Colson Real Estate is proud to present 2 exquisite properties in Weatherford, Texas, the heart of cutting horse country. The first is Lindy Birch's 34-acre ranch and comes with an incredible home and awesome covered arena and training facility. The second is a 115-acre ranch with new cedar post fencing and stone entryway. This is a gorgeous property and a great location. For more details, contact Colson Real Estate, colson.com.
Hi, we're the Gilberts from Coshada, Louisiana.
And welcome back to the Weekend Cutter.
Yeah, and now some of those scores, they throw out them high scores like candy nowadays. And granted,
well, they didn't at the Super Stakes.
They didn't. Well, that's right.
That was
they did
pretty
at this
tight.
year's Super Stakes. But that was just unheard of, a 225 in that day, and for 15, 16 years. Tell me about the year you ended up being Open World Champion.
Well, that year I showed, I've never won the world, and I love showing in weekend cuttings. I always show in the Opens, but I'd never really gone to win the world. I've never really tried to haul. So in 2000, I had this great mare named Betcha Blue Boons.
Mm-hmm.
And I was winning every Open I'd go to, or close to it. I was a competitor anyway. I was competitive. And I thought, just once in my life, I love the age events. I love the young horses, for sure. But just once in my life, I wanted to go for it and try to win the world. And there couldn't have been a better horse to take, because she's tough and strong and freckles playboy, and she absolutely had no health issues. And of course, in 2000, that mare was never even injected. Her hocks were injected when she was 12 years old. And there's not a horse living that stopped any harder or worked any harder than Bet. But she was just a tough, strong mare, and that's a complimentary way of saying it. But she was brightest and always best when we were showing. The bigger the crowd, the better for Bet. She really was a ham. So I had some fabulous runs on her, obviously, and could always call on her. And probably the very best thing about that whole experience about Bet is that I never needed to practice her. I never worked her. Never worked her at the shows. Very, very, very seldom. I had some great runs at Houston, several great years at Houston. I mean, she won the Houston finals 2 or 3 times, and I marked the high score there one year, the 233. I showed her there a lot. I never once, not once, practiced her. Not on a flag, not on a cow, not on anything. And I probably, when I was training her, when she was 2, 3, and 4, I probably worked her, more frequently than most people work till they're 15 years old. I mean, she took a lot to get going. But once she got it, once she decided that she wanted to do that, there was, Katie bar the door. That was it. And I think that's why she had such great longevity to her, is that I didn't have to wear her out or lose any of my runs in the practice pen.
Exactly. I mean, you didn't need to do a lot of practicing on her, so she stayed sound.
She stayed sound, she stayed bright. She was desirous of holding cows, and I can remember several times I would just be amazed at what she did to hold a cow, how smart she was. Physically, no question, she was a great athlete, but sometimes you can have a great athlete and they're dumb as a box of rocks, This mare, as she gained more and more experience and got older, she really improved with age. She's just like a good bottle of wine. She's got better and better and better, and she outthought cows and would jerk me around there, and I'd be thinking they were going to do something else, but she knew what they were going to do. So most of the time I just turned it over to her.
Well, that's the beauty of this sport. I really believe, and I've told people all over the country, I love watching a good reining horse work. I love watching a good calf horse or team horse, roping horse work. I'm kind of partial to our cutters have to be very intelligent. They're the only equine athlete that we ask to outthink the opposition.
Mm-hmm. On a loose rein.
On a loose rein.
Right.
So I believe that the cutting horse is the smartest equine athlete. We expect them, in today's breeding, if they're not smart, they're not going to go very far. There's not a whole lot of real big-time dumb cutting horses.
No, I can't mention one. I can't name any. And that's what's really great about cutting horses, is that not only are they the aristocrat of working horses, which I like to throw out there, but they're the smartest athletes we have. And they have to be super athletic, super conditioned, and it takes a long time to train them. Mm-hmm. But the good ones, when they rise to the top, when they take that extra step from good horse to being a great horse, they're doing that with their own brain power. They're picking up, they're raising their own bar, and we as riders get to benefit from that. We get to enjoy the ride, but we don't train that. They become great on their own.
And they want to do what
That's
they're
right.
doing. Cutting horses, they absolutely, if we couldn't be successful on them if they didn't want to do what they do. It's inherently, we've bred it to them, and Buster told me this. He said, our breeders have done a fabulous job, because back in his day when he started, there was not a whole lot of real big-time smart horses, and when one come along, it rose to the top.
Right.
He said the breeders have done just an amazing job over the last 30 years and started creating a smarter and smarter horse. And athletes, good Lord, they do things that I've had horses all my life. It was the year 2000, I saw you cut in Houston.
Right.
That was just before we moved to North Texas, but I was from Houston. That was the first time I ever saw a cutting, was at the Astro Arena.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so the first year I went down there and sat in the stands and watched a cutting, I watched you cut in Houston, Texas.
That was a great venue for cutting. Great.
And you
That's
talk
a
about
bunch of great runs there.
the horses that liven up with the crowd. They can put a crowd in the seats in Houston, Texas. Back in those days, because sometimes y'all were cutting at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, you know, and the stands were full because there was a carnival going on. There was a concert that night. Houston was always a great venue for our sport.
Well, that's part 1 of our Legends episode with the great Lindy Birch. Folks, y'all be sure and stay tuned next week as we bring you part 2 of this Legend episode with Lindy, and you'll get to see who she's giving a lesson to.
Left, right, let's dance. Let's dance. Dance, dance, cutting horse dance.